She's right, you are almost there. And now that we know a little bit more about root causes, let's talk about leverage points. And by this point, you've already done the hardest part of your project. You took your curiosity and made it into a research, looked at a few stakeholder perspectives, went into the iceberg model and even some causal loops, but now the weight of your system is getting to you. The root causes that go back generations and are underlined by structures that were made with people with power, but for people with power. Now that we understand how deeply rooted some problems are, let's figure out a few potential solutions. Before we talk about solutions, we have to figure out why some systems are stuck. And there are usually three common gaps. The first one being the wrong information is measured. And then we have people with power who aren't listening to the people experiencing the problem. And lastly, some impacts are hidden or ignored. Next, let's talk about the people in the system. Ask yourself two questions. First, who's affected the most by this problem? And second, who actually has the power to change the system? Sometimes the people closest to the problem have very little power, and the people with the most power are very far from the problem. And this tension can reveal important leverage points. A leverage point is a small place in the system that can make a big impact. Think of it like a lever. When it's put in the right place, you can move something much bigger. But remember, you're not fixing the whole system. You're simply getting something that's a 6 and maybe turn it into an 8, not a 10. Speaking of leverage points, it'd be wrong if we didn't mention Donella Meadows, who created the 12 places to intervene in a system. And I'm sure we've already seen this model, but to remind you, she mentions places such as feedback loops, quantity, resource flow, information flow, rules of a system, distribution of power, and things like mindset as well. Where do leverage points usually exist, you may ask?
Well, leverage points can exist across any system and they're going to look contextual, but there are a couple of things that we can pull from some of the models we've already talked about to help us look for the most powerful leverage points. So these 6 conditions of systems change that we get from Kana and al. Really is the iceberg with the top 2 layers chopped off. So we're no longer looking at events and patterns, but we're looking at the deeper layers. And these tend to be where the most powerful leverage points are located. So if you'll see, we have policies, practices, and resource flows, which are identified as explicit leverage points. That's because it's most obvious about how we act on them to make change. If we go deeper, we start to really think about how do we relate to each other and who has power in a system and how is that power determined. Even lower, we have the mental models, and those are the most effective leverage points, but they're also the hardest to hit. The higher we go, the more likely we are to be able to act on it, but we may not necessarily see meaningful change right away. Now, what's really cool is if you've hit on a powerful leverage point, it's not just going to change in that part of the system, but just like ripples in a pond, it'll start to change the whole system. And you will eventually see that change deeper down that you're trying to get at by shifting the entire system. It takes some time, but this is a really helpful way to start to manage the big and messy complexity that you guys have been studying in your Map the System projects.
Thanks, Catherine. And that's how you can use the 6 conditions tool to structure your thinking and also spot leverage points. Another tool that you can use to see change is the 3 horizons developed by Bill Sharp. With this tool, you can see how systems change over time. The first horizon talks about the current system. So we're looking at what the system looks like today, the arrangement. So what are the institutions, norms, structures, and power dynamics that control most of the system most of the time? The second horizon are new experiments. And so this is where small little alternatives are already happening. They could come up as new innovations, new social movements, essentially just new approaches that are already happening but have not yet become mainstream. And these could be things such as community initiatives, idea labs, and also social innovation sprints. Some will fail and some will grow, but essentially these are where real change may begin. Horizon 3 is the future vision. In this horizon, we're looking at what the system could look like if it truly worked well. Horizon 3 isn't a utopia or a perfect solution. It directs the work from Horizon 2 to answer the question of what it would look like for those affected the most. All 3 horizons exist at the same time. Your job as a systems thinker is to find Horizon 2 and push a system towards a better future.
So what you're saying, we shouldn't try to fix the whole system?
Yes, complex problems are too hard to fix altogether. We're just going to look for small parts of the system that can make a potential shift.
Should I find the biggest solution?
No, leverage points are all about uplifting the system. So we're looking at finding something that's maybe a 6 or a 7 and then turning it into an 8.
So the question isn't, what's the perfect solution?
Exactly. And tools like the 6 conditions of systems change can help you identify where to make that change.
So if I see people experimenting with new ideas?
Yes, and that's where the New Horizons tool comes in, specifically Horizon 2, where we already are seeing
alternative ideas.
If you're still stuck, here are some common leverage points that can help you connect your solutions to your interests. Want to disrupt a system? Shift or increase the flow of information to drive reinforcing loops to increase the rate of change and reduce friction. Want to slow a system down? Slow a feedback loop. Introduce some balancing behaviors that'll slow the rate of the flow of information and introduce that friction. Want to shift a behavior? Change parameters, introduce new information flow and new feedback loops. Want to build new practice? Develop action from mental models and align new action with existing mental models or new ones. Now that you have all the tools that you need, let's get ready to tell your story.